I set out with a lot of ambition. I will probably only manage half of it. But what matters is what I experience along the way. This adventure is a bit of a gamble, because I'm relying on a single camera and one lens. All in. Can I do justice to the photographic impressions waiting for me in this country with such a reduced setup? I will not save my conclusion for the end. We will work our way toward it together. If I had to summarize right now what surprised me most about the Nikon Zf after spending all this time with it would be 4 things. The powerful in-body stabilization, rated for up to 8 stops of compensation. The much improved autofocus, built around Nikon's newer IBIS 7 generation and subject detection system. The unusual mechanical way of operating the camera in an age of modern, mirrorless bodies. To be honest, only about half of that was actually a reason for me to buy it. But to show you what all of this means in real life, we need a change of location before we return to this lost place. Hello everyone, I'm in the middle of Tunisia, south of Herdla. Not on the fine white sand beaches, but here on this rugged cliff, as you can probably see, where the waves are breaking against the rocks. And I'm trying to make a few beautiful images. With me is the Nikon Zf in the moss green edition, which I personally find absolutely beautiful. This is a retro camera with a nostalgic design. That means it relies heavily on mechanical controls. Will that get in the way of me and my workflow? And what can we get out of the Nikon Zf, not only for stills, but also for video? After all, it borrows a lot from Nikon's current generation in terms of processor, autofocus logic and subject recognition. That is what we are going to find out together. There's a lot to see here in Tunisia. Come along! The first obstacle I have to overcome is unreachable: the sun. It is not just hot, it is bright. Not exactly the best moment to photograph landscapes. With the polarizer, I at least want to reduce some of the reflections on the water and save a little color. And with an ND filter, I want to make the quite interesting seabed visible. Even though I would have liked to pull the rock formations closer, with 40mm I'm deliberately choosing a compromise between a classic focal length and something more versatile for everyday shooting. At this point, any photographer will want to use a viewfinder, and it is good to know that the round eye cup of the EVF is very comfortable. The 0.5-inch OLED viewfinder with 3.69 million dots is detailed, bright enough, and the colors look excellent. It sits exactly where you would expect it to be in the market, on par with the competition, but with a very pleasant 0.8 times magnification. There's no doubt that having a viewfinder like this in front of your eye is a relief when the sun is as strong as it is today. There's something almost hypnotic about watching the waves hit the rugged coast and seeing the water run down the rocks. Slowly the competition seems to be moving toward around 30 megapixels as a new standard. But for now, I do not really miss anything. The 24.5 megapixel backside illuminated CMOS sensor in the Nikon Zf is a proven piece of technology that allows me to capture the scene with precision. More than 14 stops of dynamic range make it clear that this camera can handle harsh contrast situations very well. I can darken the bright areas and lift the shadows enough until something emerges that I actually like. There's more than enough reserve here, but what gives me even more joy is the moment itself. I enjoy every second. Experiencing photography up close, that is my motivation. What you should not expect in this price class is a stacked sensor with a very fast readout speed. What that means for rolling shutter and autofocus performance is not something the static landscape can really answer. Finally, Nikon has built in a fully articulating screen that makes life easier not only for filming, but also for low-angle photography. This bright 2.1 million dot display is one area where Nikon is ahead of some of the competition. The ZF screen offers full touch functionality. At the same time, Nikon leaves out a joystick, something I personally would have preferred in bright situations like this. As I think about the reasons why, I notice this rock being hit by wave after wave. Its sharp edges and rough surface create a beautiful contrast to the flowing movement of the waves, which are blurred slightly with an ND filter to create a play between sharpness and softness. Since Nikon is not reinventing the wheel with the sensor, there's not much new to say about sharpness either. For now, I put image quality aside and turn to the two technological highlights of the Nikon Zf, autofocus and IBIS. For that, I need a less static subject. How about some run and gun work in the Medina? Tunisian roads are bumpy. But the combination of in-body stabilization and autofocus is already impressive here. Of course, bumps in the road are still visible, but they affect the image less abruptly than I remember from the Z2 generation. Up to 8 stops of stabilization turn out to be an improvement that can make a real difference in practice. My thoughts drift toward this hanging chain. The autofocus tracking holds onto it with such stubborn reliability that I'm fairly sure some other systems would have lost it by now. At this sacred place, I practice filming and take photos in between. What a charming place, full of details. IBIS systems never work on the level of a gimbal, but getting handheld camera movements this smooth is basically all I need to stitch the impressions of my adventure together. The photographer is rewarded. It is a quiet place. Henna is being applied here, while people can simply slow down for a moment. IBIS and autofocus allow me to react quickly to situations. Up to 11 frames per second in RAW and pre-release capture in the high-speed JPEG modes help me catch decisive moments more reliably. I become completely absorbed in this moment and realize how well this camera suits exactly this kind of use. It feels as if I were one of those seasoned photographers on a documentary journey through Tunisia. During the photo walk through the Medina, individual subjects keep standing out, and I gladly document them. White facades meet colorful shops. Thanks to the 29 cm minimum focusing distance, the 40mm f2 allows close-up images that are more than respectable, making this prime more flexible than it may seem at first. Exploring is worth it. Parts of the Medina feel almost like a lost place. That motivates me to dive deeper into the winding alleys and catch an unpolished glimpse of everyday life. Weathered white walls with blue doors creating a wonderful contrast. Contrasts where I honestly cannot decide whether the photo works better in color or in black and white. There are not many autofocus challenges in these alleys, but then there are moments when a subject enters an interesting scene and I only have a few seconds to pull out the camera and press the shutter. Subject detection recognizes people faster and it tracks them more reliably. Compared to the Z2 generation, I notice a clear improvement. In green, this camera is not exactly invisible, but technically it is very well equipped for this kind of use. Documentary work, street photography, exquisite still lifes in beautiful colors. Why green is not necessarily the best choice if a secure grip matters to you is something I might talk about in a separate video on choosing the right set of color. Now, let's see what the rooftops of the Medina have to offer. Tunisian architecture impresses with clean lines and white walls. Artful vases and elegant arches add a historical note, while plants and tiles bring a sense of comfort even on hot days. The rooftop itself is a highlight. The difficult part is the harsh light hitting white walls, creating high contrast situations where details can easily burn out. In the bright areas I can recover quite a lot. In the shadows anyway, without any significant noise appearing. Here too, the Nikon Zf proves its very good dynamic range and forgives quite a bit of exposure imperfection. Thanks to internal 10-bit log recording, there's some flexibility for video grading, and I need that because I often do not choose the ideal settings or the situation simply does not allow it. The Zf records oversampled 4K 30 frames from the full width of the sensor. 4K 60 frames comes with a 1.5 times crop, so it is not Nikon's most advanced video camera, especially by today's standards, but for the kind of handheld travel footage I shoot, the combination of 10-bit log, solid image quality and strong stabilization still goes a long way. Time to leave. I will take the souvenir with me. In good weather, good results are not too difficult. So what does the camera do under poor lighting conditions? Artificial light illuminates the night. In dark areas away from the light, which I bring up in post, noise could quickly become visible. I'm dealing with changing light and harsh contrasts. And here, 10-bit log gives me more room in post-production. In N-Log, the ISO starts at 800. ISO 800 and 6400 both give me very usable results. Mostly just some luminance noise, but nothing dramatic. The combination of 4K 10-bit log, strong stabilization and good high ISO performance works well enough that the Nikon Zf can deliver crisp video images even in low light. ISO 20,000 without noise reduction. Absolutely usable in my opinion. And that means I can photograph at night without worrying too much. I can deliberately play with light and shadow, capture rich colors thanks to good white balance, and still shoot sharp snapshots even in the dark. For both photo and video, the autofocus works surprisingly well. The camera does focus confidently in very low light most of the time. At this place, the circle closes. Here are my thoughts on the Nikon Zf. The weather shield body is robust, feels larger than it actually is, and it is not a full magnesium alloy shell. Whether that has anything to do with my first scratch, I cannot really say. I will not turn this into a fully ergonomics review, but a short version is the Zf feels solid, beautifully made, and a little more comfortable with an added grip. An excellent IBIS system and a much more reliable autofocus are a noticeable improvement coming from the Z6 and Z7 too. With the Zf, Nikon finally brings a higher technological level into a retro camera in a way that feels quite competitive. Apparently, though, that does not fully apply to vlogging, where the IBIS has a harder time compensating for my shaky arm. With the sensor, Nikon is not reinventing the wheel, and that is not a bad thing. It has already proven itself in terms of dynamic range, sharpness and color. Only the readout speed can become an issue in very fast action, where a rolling shutter may appear. In return, the noise performance is excellent, and the video features are more than capable for the kind of filmmaking I do. So, is everything wonderful? Honestly, I'm torn. I love the design and the color, but it feels as if I cannot love this camera quite as much as it deserves. Not because it is bad, but because I'm apparently not enough of a purist and too much of a pragmatist who has become used to the fast workflows of modern mirrorless cameras. And that is not really what the Zf is trying to be. There are two things that bother me. Actually, three. First, without the thumb rest and the wheel grip, the Nikon Zf is not truly comfortable to hold for me. A grip extension helps, and there are good options, but personally Personally, I feel that it weakens the design. An integrated grip would have suited the camera better in practical terms, and it might also have created more space for a second full-size memory card slot. Second, the brass dials, which will age over time, are Nikon's love letter to retro fans, using them as a tactile experience because they offer strong resistance. That means you have to consciously dedicate yourself to adjusting them. At first, I really enjoyed that, and I still do, but in practice, it often slows me down. A lot of this can be worked around. You can put many functions, including ISO, on the right side of the camera and operate the ZF much more like a modern mirrorless body. You can also use the 1/3 step position and the command dials for shutter speed, so the camera can be made faster than its retro exterior suggests. Third, Nikon leans into retro charm and mechanical operation, but leaves out the joystick, a control I personally find much better than the directional pad in many shooting situations. Sure, it is a retro camera, but that did not stop Nikon from giving it a modern, fully articulating screen with extensive touch functionality. Maybe it's just me, but in my use, that replacement does not work as well. So I find myself in an inner conflict. This is not a fundamental criticism of the camera. Most of this was known before buying it. And yes, you could argue that if the handling matters this much to me, I should have known that beforehand. Fair point. But a long practical trip still tells you things a spec sheet and a showroom cannot. And what I learned is this. I had a wonderful time with the Nikon Zf. I made images I really like. The reduction to one camera and one lens helped me focus. The camera is technically much stronger than its nostalgic appearance might suggest. And yet, I repeatedly caught myself wanting to work around its beautifully executed control concept. That does not make the Zf a worse camera, it simply tells me something about how I work. So is the Nikon Zf for you? If you love retro cameras, appreciate mechanical controls because they slow you down, and want that together with a modern Nikon technology, then the Zf is special. In full frame, there's basically nothing quite like it, and nothing quite as beautiful. If, however, you mainly want the inner qualities, but you also want the mature handling and speed of a modern mirrorless body, then the Z6 III may be the more sensible camera for you. For me, the Zf remains a fascinating camera, because there's something about it that keeps pulling me back. I will keep exploring where it works for me, where it gets in my way, and whether I can find a way to use it on its own terms, instead of forcing it into mine.